and maybe you can take a little break in here and talk a little bit about bad questions, because we had a lot of good questions. And from the top of your heads, tell me what would be the worst questions to ask a candidate during the Angular interview? And we can start with Chau in here.
Well, bad questions in my books are questions that you can basically Google. Like, what are the Angular life cycle hooks? Right? I don't like that kind of questions. Well, instead, if you wanna kind of like assess the candidate's um, knowledge about life cycle hooks, I would ask, when does ng on init run, or when does ng on changes run, like things like that. Instead of asking, what are the Angular life cycle hooks? I don't like that question at all. Right? Let me think. I'll think while Brecht is answering.
Yes. So I definitely agree with Chao there. Like any specific API, Angular API related question is yeah, don't ask these questions where you have to sum up stuff. But what I really hate, and to be honest, if I have to do it in an interview, I just cancel it or I walk away. It's like when they make you do live coding or something. I really hate that thing because that puts the person in question under so much stress, and he has this feeling that he needs to perform rather than he can talk with another tech guy, you know. And there's still a lot of companies that do that, and they send them home with assessments that take them like 2 days to finish. So they have to work for free for 2 days to create an assessment of a job that they might not have because there are tons of other candidates for that function. So I would always be in favor of making sure that the candidate has as little stress as possible. That doesn't mean that he or she cannot perform under stress, but it means that they're so comfortable that they will try to share as much as they know with you, and that's your goal as an interviewer, right? You want to know as much information as you want to learn as much about that person as you can. So you can do that by talking rather than having these like summarized question that Joe is saying, or making them do exercises or stuff like that. Like don't ask them like what is a closure. I mean, there are even I know what a closure is, but if I have to explain it right now, I'm like, oh fuck, how am I doing this right now? Closure, yeah. So there's this function and this, you know, I mean, don't try to, yeah, don't try to do these kind of things. Try to reason with them, like, indeed, when is ng init being executed? Like, ng changes, and then you can go more senior in ng changes, like how many times is it being executed in a change detection cycle, for instance. And I wouldn't ask that question unless you really know like this person is comfortable about like or he or she is really senior. Um, yeah, I think my 2 cents are just like try to keep the stress level for the candidate as low as possible and don't ask them these textbook questions.
Yeah, I agree. I also hate these quiz questions when you get to see some kind of clever JavaScript code and you have to tell what will be the outcome of this very clever JavaScript code, and you have 3 minutes to tell me what is going to happen in here. Mihai, you want to say something with
Yeah, actually, I have another example of a bad question or something that I see of being a bad question, and that is uh, mainly at the beginning of the interview, at the discussion. How many years of experience do you have in Angular? I consider it bad because I don't see it being relevant. It doesn't tell me necessarily much about the mind of the ones sitting at the other end of the line. For example, how much he or she was able to gather as knowledge, as experience, as skills in those X years. So this is just an opinion of mine. It's like a useless question or even a bad question. But I was wondering if Brecht and Charles sees it the same.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah,
I mean, I started giving training in Angular before there was documentation. I mean, I didn't really knew what I was doing at the time. I mean, with the limited information I had, I was fine. But even if Angular 2, like the first version, got released, yeah, people started to use it for big customers, for big projects. I mean, they didn't have any experience in it. So why would it make sense how much experience they have in a certain technology? You have people that learn something in a month, when people that are just being lazy for 5 years, sitting on their desk watching Game of Thrones and once in a while coding. I had colleagues like that. I mean, I don't think it makes sense to put a number on it. What do you think, Joe?
absolutely. I mean, simple math, right? A person with 2 years into the job doing 4 hours a day on Angular, another person 1 year, but it does 8 hours. So now, how many years of experience do the guys have? Right? So that's very subjective. Like years of experience is very subjective to the person who put in the work. Now go back to Brecht's answers on the interview. For to some degree, I do prefer to have a live code interview, but not on questions like traverse Linglet or whatever like that. I would like to bring to have the candidate bring their own issues. So an issue, an old issue that they work on, old feature that they work on their previous job. They work on an open source project, a side project, anything. Bring their own issue, and we can try talking about it, and maybe we can do a little pair coding session. And also about the take home assignment, it really depends on the take home. If a take home doesn't have a time limit, that's a to me that's a red flag. But I prefer setting out take home, but ask the candidate to only time boxes to like do not spend more than 2 hours on this take home. Right? Let's say build a build a contact list or build a task list that can assign to people. For example, that's a take home assignment. You can use Angular and you can use whatever state management library you want. That's the requirement. Right? And I would ask them to spend only 2 hours, 2.5 hours on that take home. Do not spend more than that, and try to complete as much as possible. And then when it comes time to the interview, we have something that we can discuss. Say, okay, what do you like about the assignment? What would you change if you have more time? What can you add? Do you have any features that you want to work on right now? So that's a little pairing session that we can have with the candidate because we have something that we can talk about. And to me, that's a nice way to assess the skill rather than just talking. So I do like having some actions in the interview rather than just talking. And we can have it like in multiple rounds as well, not just one round. I do hate multiple rounds interviews, but 2 rounds might be reasonable for me.
Okay, what do you think about that, Brecht? About this part, this more friendly live coding?
Yeah, I like it.